All right, with everything going on today, it's been like a half a day since I paused the video last, and then while Janie and I were eating some dinner, we accidentally clicked the button and it stopped the video. So hopefully I can merge these two videos. If not, welcome to part two of making the ladies' clutch wallet. Well, before we paused it, we were going to sew this zipper in and then sew all the way around this card pocket here. And that's exactly what we've gotten done. And now what we need to do is we have our two pieces like this. And I'm going to go ahead and edge just the top part of both of them as soon as I find the second one. All right, well, we will do one for now. Nope, there it is. Sorry, had to move stuff to eat dinner. So anyway, I'm going to use a Ron's Montana Edger number 1. The Montana Edgers, I've talked about them in other videos. They're specifically designed for really thin leather. And again, this is about 2 ounce that I'm edging here. So there we go. I'm going to edge them, and then I'm going to put some dye on that edge, and then I'm going to burnish it right quick. And I'll do this on both of these two pieces just so it's done. Because once it's all sewn together, it'll be a lot more difficult to burnish this edge. So we might as well get it done while we have it. All right, grab some dye here. This is Phoebing's medium brown. It'll go just fine with the colors that we're already using. I'm just going to take my little dauber and run it right across the tops here. There we go. All right, now I'll take my Ron's Edge rub that on there, and find my piece of canvas. And just give it a real quick slicking so that the edge looks nice and finished for what we're going to do here. Nothing says professional quality like good edges, folks. If your edges are nice and finished, it just really adds that last touch, that last little bit of professionalism to your project. It's one of the first things I look at when I see, people that say, "Oh, I do custom leather work." It's one of the first things I look at is if they took the time to really work on their edges and finish things like that. Because again, it's all those little details are what make the complete project either better or worse. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and clip off this extra bit of zipper here. I already I trimmed this piece off right back here, but I need to clip off this part right here. I could use my scalpel for it, but I know I had some scissors. I took them over there by my stitching horse when I was sewing a while ago. So I'm just going to cut through it here, and there is a little bit of a wire there that I am going to need the scissors for. But I want to trim it off short enough that it's not going to be out here in my stitching. So there we go. Trimmed it off nice and short so that it won't be in my stitching. Now the next thing I need to do is I am going to take some binder clips, which are a leather worker's best friend. Again, we have a short side and a long side on this, and I am going to clip this to the long side so that I can sew that little U shape right there, and it'll hold together while I sew. I don't want to glue it because I don't know where the glue would really end up on this other piece here, since I only have that line drawn on this piece. Got a whole bucket of these little clips. I love these things. All right. So I need to take my my pricking irons, and I'm going to run a little stitch line right there. I'm not as concerned with the stitch length being exact on all of this because this stitch is all but hidden inside the pockets and stuff. And so yeah. All right, so all I'm going to do now is just sew that little line up right there. And when that is done, we'll come back and we will form the rest of this pocket by sewing around the other three sides of the zippered pouch. So we're going to pause it and we'll be back. All right, so I got that sewn in there. I can take my little binder clips off now. I'm sure I'll find a reason to have them on again later. Grab the wrong thing here. Where's my scalpel? All right, I've shown this before, but it's always a good little tip. When cutting your strings and stuff, if you're going to try to cut them as close to the leather as you can, one way to do that is take your scalpel and just lay it on the leather right up against the string and then wiggle the string back and forth up against the scalpel. It'll cut it off nice and flush, and you won't accidentally slip and cut your leather or your other string or anything like that. So it's a neat little practice to get into, and it really does. I mean, I don't really have to burn many string ends and stuff because it's already so tight up against the leather. So, all right. The next thing we need to do is fold our coin pouch in half and glue it together so that we can sew it together. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that this part right here doesn't want to fold. It would rather make your zipper be part of the fold, and you don't want to let that happen. So once we're done sewing that, we can always put it under a book or something to press that down. On the prototype, I did sew that part down just like I do on the fold of my card pockets and stuff, but honestly, it kind of limited what you could even hold in here because it laid it too flat. So I'm going to leave it without doing that. I think it'll be a better option. I mean, the zipper's firmly sewn in there and everything, so I'm not worried about the pressure against it or anything. But anyway, I do need to take my contact cement, and I will glue down all four sides of this so that I can fold it in half and glue it together. Get my cutting board out of the way so that I can have my gluing board in the way. Too many boards. All right, and I'm just going to get the very, very edge is all I need so that I can sew it together, and then also if I get the glue all the way out to the edge, then it'll ensure that I'll have nicely burnished edges too, and I'll be able to sand that down to where it looks like one piece of leather instead of two. Okay, there's 3 of them. And there's that 4th one. All right, now I'm going to have to wait a second to glue this together. You've got to always wait for your cement to set up for a second. But I do want to bring attention to the idea that, you know, there's a whole separate piece underneath this, and I don't want it to accidentally be stitched all together. This is a separate piece for a reason, and that way that coin purse is kind of like an accordion so that it can pull away from the main body of the wallet, and it'll be able to hold more stuff. And then also making it that way allows it to not, if it was sewn up against say the back of the wallet, then it wouldn't hold as much, and it would kind of deform the wallet when it was full of stuff. But this way it won't be so much. So I'm going to take, and I'm going to very, very carefully start at my corner and glue these 2 pieces together. Or, well, this one in half is what I mean. All right. So, again, this piece down here, I'm not trying to sew it to this piece. So when I do my stitch line, I got to be very careful that when I use my cutting surface, my punching surface, I am going to put it just like this on my punching surface so that I'm only going to go through that top layer right there. I don't want to go through the next layer. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and draw me a little stitch line, and then I'm going to punch it, and then I'm going to sew it. All right, and I'll just punch a couple of holes just to show an example here, and then I'm going to pause it, and when I come back, it'll all be sewn together, and we'll move on to some final assembly. Getting the whole thing put together. I'm pretty excited about it. So just like that. Like I said, I'm going to pause this, and when I come back, this will be sewn together, and we'll be able to put the rest of the wallet together. All right, so got those sides sewn down and everything. And again, I didn't sew it to its backing here. While I had it paused, I went ahead and just sanded the edges out there on my sander right quick so I could burnish those edges. And cut my string tails off here. And then we're going to move on to the next part. All right. So now on this one, on this back pocket here, I need to burnish that very bottom edge right there because it's not going to be sewn to the edge of anything. So I need to burnish that bottom edge. And then on this one, I need to burnish all three of these sides. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I'm getting pretty excited because we're getting real close to our last bit of final assembly where this project's really going to come together. So yeah. Tell you what I am going to do though is I'm going to cut those little corners off just a baby little bit, just to help round those a little bit because I don't want them to stick out like that once the wallet's complete. I won't get a chance once it's assembled. So all right, now the back side. All right, so there we are. Like I said, I did all sides of the accordion part, this front part, front and back. And then on the bottom part here, I just did this one edge and only on this top side. I didn't bother with the bottom side because that's going to be sewn down to something. So it doesn't necessarily need to be rounded. It just needs to be finished. And now I'm going to dye all those same edges. Tell you what, I still see a little bit of glue right there, so I'm going to go back out there and sand that just a little bit more. Sorry about that. I'll be right back. All right, while I was out there sanding, I thought, man, that could have been an awesome teaching point. But basically, as I was putting dye on this edge, glue makes an excellent resist, so I could see areas where the dye wasn't getting into the leather. It wasn't penetrating. And that means there's glue on the edge. And if there's glue on the edge, it's not going to burnish 100% either. So that's why I went out there and resanded it because, like I've been saying over and over, it's all about the details. And so glue on your edge is not a pretty sight. So now I got to rebevel this right quick. Then I'll re-dye it. And again, I'll look for any areas that the glue or the dye doesn't penetrate, which means the glue still isn't off, but I think we got it good this time. I used a heavier grit sandpaper and knocked off a little bit more. When I'm talking about sanding it, for anybody that may not know or need clarification, I'm using a Cobra burnisher out there, and it's just got a big sanding disc on it, and I'm literally sanding it like you would wood, and that helps to even out the edges and get them nice and flush with each other so that when you burnish, it will it'll look as one edge and not two pieces of leather that are glued together if you sand it right and get it good and flush. All right, so we're going to dye that one more again. Again, this is an Angelus medium brown. It's one of my favorites because it's kind of a reddish brown. Some people don't like reddish browns, but I do. All right, much better. Now that dye is very even all the way across, so I know I'll get a very nice burnished edge once I do that. So, get my burnishing compound here, the Ron's Edge Rub. Go ahead and do both these bottom edges at once because I can do them both at the same time. I'm not going to burnish them pushed together. I'm going to burnish them separated by my finger because you want the rag to be able to reach all the sides of it. So that's why I'm going to separate them with my finger, but still just do them both at the same time. All right, getting a nice edge there. All right, now I'll do these two ends on this one piece. Again, I don't have to do the ends on the back piece here because it's going to be burnished along with the body of the clutch. All right, done. A second to clear off some area here and get rid of some stuff in the way. One thing I do want to do before I forget is I'm going to take this final piece here and I am going to put my stitch line, my stitch groove in it all the way around because I do want a stitch groove in that nice thick piece there. So I'm going to do that right now before I start building this because I can lay this perfectly flat right now. Later on I won't be able to lay it flat. So I'm going to come in about a little over 1/8 of an inch and put my groove. I'm going to see if my groover blade's been damaged or something. It's not sliding through here very easily like it normally does. And this is not a tool that you want to jerk on you because you don't want it to accidentally go too far. If I have another groover over here, I'm going to use it until I can figure out what might have happened to that one because, again, I'm not trying to screw this up. So. I don't always groove everything I sew. I mean, it doesn't. saw me not groove the really thin stuff when I was sewing it. But on veg tan especially, and anything over, say, 4 ounces, I do like to put a nice groove in there. And it does help you have a more professional stitch, because your stitch is going to lay down in that channel, and it's going to look really nice. All right, I'm going to pause this for a second and get ready for the next step. Just clearing off some stuff and getting some different tools, and I'll be right back. All right, so this is where it's going to get tricky. With how the original version of this happened with the prototype, there was a stitch line right about here. Or maybe it was over here. Either way, I forget where it was, but there was a stitch line that was on the outside of the wallet. And if you're going to tool up something pretty like this, you don't want to have to stitch through it. So from here out, we're going to have to build it into the liner and then sew this on and trim it down. I've done this a few times, not way too many, because most of my my projects I make sure I don't have to do this. If you're careful about your measurements and all that, then it's not that difficult to do, but you do have to pay really close attention to what you're doing. All right. So what I want to do first is put this on here and kind of trace around it with a pin. Remember, I cut this liner just a tiny bit bigger than the finished piece. I did that on purpose because once it's all sewn together, I want to be able to trim it down. But I need to take a pin and measure or mark and trace the liner. I'm drawing on the flesh side of the liner, the part that's going to be glued to the backing. Okay, I'm not drawing on the finished side of it, so my line will be completely hidden, even if I miss it by a millimeter or two. But the goal is that we won't miss it by a millimeter. All right, we have that. Now, here's how this thing is going to go down. This is going to sew. This pocket will be glued on 3 sides and sewn to this. Well, it'll be glued at first, sorry. All right, now, 1 1/8 inches above it is where this pocket is going to glue in. All right, so that's what we're kind of eyeballing here to measure, is where, let me find my marker, it's normally stuck to my shirt. Okay, if this bottom pocket is along that bottom line that I drew, then the top of it, the distance between the top of it and the bottom of the next pocket should be 1 1/8 inches. Let me get a ruler here. So there we are. We're at 1 1/8 inches here. And I'm just going to take my marker and draw a little line, or more, make a little dot, I guess you could say, right there to mark where the bottom of that pocket will be. And then I'll do the exact same thing on the other side. Inch and 1/8. Now, again, I've made these marks on the side of the leather that's going to be glued to the backing. So now I have to turn it over, and I have to transfer the exact same marks. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put them right on the very edge of the leather. I'm not going to put them on the surface that's finished. I'm going to put them right here on the edge. All right. Now, got those done. I'll take any straight edge I've got, and I'm going to line up those 2 marks. This may be a straight edge that's actually big enough to reach all the way across. I'm going to line up those 2 marks with my straight edge, and I'm going to take a stylus, and I'm just going to draw me a light line that won't be seen once the whole thing is assembled. Sorry if my head's in the way, I got to see both sides of this line. All right, that's not looking straight, so I'm going to make sure here. Grab a square, and I'm going to make sure, again, this is all part of how you got to check stuff like this to make sure that you're nice and square and everything is going to be right with your lines. And all I'm doing is checking for the squareness of my drawn lines here, and then my straight edge that's going from dot to dot there. Make me a new dot here where I'm showing to be square and see how far it is from the other one. A little bit off. All right, so I'm going to measure that whole thing one more time just to make sure I know what I'm doing here. All right, now we're good to go. Okay, so now I'm going to scribe a little line here so that I can know where to glue this pocket. Now the other thing I'm going to do is just keep in mind, okay, we're about 1/8 of an inch in and about 3/16 on this side. Just basically trying to center this right and left in between those lines that I drew on the back. And that's about it right there. All right, so now I have 3 lines right here, and that's what I'm going to be gluing these 3 sides of this pocket to right here. Just getting a little bit of glue on this. I just need to hold it in place while I sew. And then on this one, I'm going to have to be careful with my glue because I don't want it to seep out from under the pocket. I don't want to be able to see it. Nothing worse than shiny glue on a finished project. All right, so on this one, the bottom line is the only one I'm really worried about the seepage. On the sides, it's all going to be trimmed down and sanded. So I'll kind of smear it on the sides here. Don't want to go any further than 1 inch or 1/4 of an inch over the line there. Got to go across the bottom. Again, I don't want it to seep over that line. If it does, the good news is, since this is a finished leather, You can wait for it to dry, and then you can kind of roll it off with your finger. But if you don't have to, then don't. You got to wait on that to set up for a second. And there we go. That is glued together. Now, this is the sew line I was talking about. Is right here. This line needs to be sewn down, very next thing, and then we will start putting the backing on it and doing our final assembly. So I'm going to find my iron. There it is. I'm really bad about just leaving tools laying around, then blades get knocked into each other. And it's just terrible. Draw me a stitch line here. All right, so I'm going to draw that stitch line. I'm going to go ahead and use my pricking iron and go all the way through and sew that line on. And when we unpause it, that's where we'll be. So here we go with another break. All right, so we are down to, I got that part sewn on right there. The next thing we're going to need to do is I'm going to go from the back side here, and I'm going to put my original template over it. I'm going to let this hang off my cutting board so that it'll lay flat. And I need to mark where that hole is because I'm going to put the snap in that portion of it right now. Again, I'm putting the snap into the liner on this part because I don't want to put the snap on the outside of my tooling here. So this will be kind of a hidden snap. And yeah, so I'm just going to take my stylus and put a little dot right there so I'll know where the snap's going to go. Give me a hole punch that'll go along with my line 24 snap. Give it a whack. All right, now let me grab, I've got some antique brass snaps here. I thought that might look nice with this project. And what I'm going to do the hidden snap is I'm not going to use the nice domed button portion that you would normally see. I'll just use another one of the interior backs off of it. This piece right here, because it's going to be in between my layers of leather, so it doesn't matter that it's not pretty. So it'll be just like this. Let me get a bigger hole punch. Misjudged that. All right. Okay, let's try that again. All right, so that's going to go easily in there now. And I will take the cup, as I call it, portion of the snap. As soon as I find one, there it is. I'll put that on there, and I'm going to get my Berry King snap setter here. And set the snap. This is a line 24 snap. It's pretty thin leather, so this is going to be a second here. Let me get on a solid surface. That didn't set right. Give me just a second here, folks. All right. Snap got just a tiny bit off, but I don't think it's going to be enough to screw up the final project here. I think I'll do a lot more damage trying to drill it out and do it again than I would just leaving it in place. the other end of the snap has to go into this portion right here. So once again, I'll put my template piece that I just had in my hand. There it is. And unfortunately, this piece will have to be on the outside of the wallet. There's just no choice about it. That's where it's got to be. Do a nice hard impression there because I want to be able to see it within all that tooling. And luckily it's in a really nice symmetrical point of the tooling where it's just right in the split of those two scrolls. So that's going to, I'm not going to say look nice, but I mean, it'll be better than if it was just kind of haphazardly thrown in there. Okay. Once again, I'll use the standard post for the back of that part of the snap. Just like what I used in here. And then I will use the male portion of the snap that fits inside the cup thingy. I probably should learn the technical terms for all four of those pieces, but I have not. All right, turn my snap setter over and use the other side of it. Drop the setter portion in there and give it a few whacks. Good and solid. Part of my problem when I set the other end is I started it on this mat, and the mat's soft, and I should have started it right there on the granite, and that would have made a much easier setting. All right, so now for the fun part, which is lining these two halves up and gluing them together. All right. To get myself started, I'm going to take a straight edge and I'm going to trim right along that bottom line that I drew there so that I can hopefully line this stuff up to glue it. Because I'm going to be doing it this way right here. And actually, I guess I don't even need to trim that. I guess I can just do it from here. So that's fine. All right. So forget the trimming. I was just imagining that. Get my glue board, my punch board out of the way. Get my glue board back out. And we're just going to slather the back side of this and the back side of this with cement. And we're going to put them together. I wasn't playing with the slather part. We're just going to get them on there. I want that glue to go all the way out past my drawn line there to make sure it's everywhere. Get it all over that snap area so that part sticks real nice. All right, I'll set this piece aside to set up a little bit. Accidentally got a little bit of it on my finger, as usual. All right, now the same thing on this side. We're going to just slather glue all over it. Again, I'm getting it all the way out to the edge because that's going to help my burnished edge be nice and tight. All right. Right up there in the corner, I might have missed a spot. Get that out of the way. Peel all the excess off my hands while that sets up for a second. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to pause this for a couple of minutes so that glue can set up real well before I stick these together. All right. So now we're going to glue this together. Let me get out my cutting surface or my punching surface back up here because I want that to have something to set on while I line these lines up and start pressing this together because of that that pocket that's sewn on there. Problem with using a contact cement that's so daggum good is you don't get a second chance. Once it's on, it's on. All right, squeaky toy back here. I want to be careful when I'm rolling around that snap and everything. Try to keep that kind of flat. All right, get that on there good and solid. That's what I need. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and trim that liner off. And we'll kind of see how we did on lining up that pocket. It looks pretty daggum good from where I'm sitting, so let's hope. Get my scalpel out here, and I'm just going to carefully cut right along the veg tan. And I'm going to sand it later, so it's okay if I'm give it a little too much leeway, I guess you can say. Again, it's easier to do this up here because then I can set that pocket off the edge of it and still have a flat surface to cut against. That's why I'm working around the punching surface. Same thing with the button. I'm going to have the button hanging off of it a little bit there so I can cut this on a flat surface. All right. Now, we've got 2 more pockets that need to be sewn in, plus these edges here. So, what I have to do is I'm going to glue in this pocket right here. I'm going to glue it all the way up against the bottom edge and the 2 sides here. And then we're going to do our stitching in a very particular order because this piece right here is only going to be sewn to the bottom part. Again, that creates a flap that folds back so that you can get to the cards that are on the back side of it. So I am going to have to finish 2 of the sides on this. I'm going to have to burnish those edges up right quick before I start my final assembly on that. But I can go ahead and glue this piece in. So I'm going to take it, put it on there, measure where the top of it is, and just put a little fingerprint indentation right in the corner so I know where not to put glue any further than. And we'll get that glued in. Sorry, I got some glue on the threads here that's keeping this thing from shutting good. I got to wait on that to set up for a second anyway, so it'll be all right. There we go. All right. I'll start down here in the corner, work my way over to the other corner, and then just press it all the way across once I know it's in position right. Okay, so I am going to start punching my stitch holes all the way along and across the top and down the other side there, and I'm not going to punch them down here. Okay, again, reason being is because I'm going to end up adding this piece, but I want to sew these 3 sides before I add this piece. Even though this piece is a little bit more narrow than the main body of the wallet, I still want to make sure that I've got plenty of room to get nice proper stitching front and back without having to work around this once it's on the inside of the wallet. So I'm going to start at this corner, and I'm going to punch my holes all the way around. Again, with this thing here right here, I'm going to have it kind of hanging off of my punching surface like that so that I can get good even holes all the way around. And then same thing going down the other side there. When we come back, I'm going to pause the video. When we come back, I'm going to have those 3 sides sewn down, and we'll be ready to incorporate our 4th side. So here we go again. All right, so I sewed down 3 sides. I did start like halfway up this bottom pocket here with my stitches. I started right there. Reason for that is I I don't like starting and stopping a stitch in a corner. That's a high wear point, and I just don't like doing it. I'm sure if I did, it still would last years and years and years, and everything would be fine. But it's just almost a superstition of mine that I don't like to start my stitches in a corner or in a fold. So anyway, I will have a few stitches right here still to go, but other than that, I went all the way down to this corner. I've still got my tails here, and I'm gonna continue sewing all the way around to finish this. Also during the pause, like I talked about, I went ahead and burnished the two edges, the two sides of this this double-sided card pocket. And what I need to do now is glue it down here at this very bottom part right here. And I'm just going to glue that little lip where the unfinished leather is. And that's all that's going to be stitched. And that way, as it breaks in, it'll be a nice little fold to allow you to fold it down. And then, I mean, this wallet will almost be that long when that's done. And that'll be pretty awesome. That'll really have a lot of space, a lot of room, and it'll hold a lot of stuff. Anyway, so now I'm going to glue that bottom edge down there. And once I've done that, I will go ahead and create my stitch holes. And I'm going to stitch through all that too. And we're getting real close to being done here, which is good because it's almost 8 o'clock at night, and this video's been running since about 7 this morning. All right, I'm going to let that set up for just a second here. I'll pause the video while I do, and then I'll come back and glue it in just a minute. All right, that's had a minute to set up. So I'm going to make sure my strings are out of the way. I don't want them glued in. I'm just going to this is not as wide as this. And that's on purpose so that when the wallet is in use or closed or whatever, you don't have cards like sticking out the edges of it and stuff. So I'm going to kind of center it right to left and then just right up along. I want it right on the same, want it right along the edge down here at the bottom. And I'm going to press that one little area on there good and tight. And then I'll take my little squeaky toy and I'll roll it on real good so that I've got a good bond for when I'm about to punch these holes. Squeaky toy's not squeaking. All right, just like that. So, now I'm going to go along and I'm going to punch these holes down here at the bottom, and we'll complete our stitching. Again, when I punch these holes, I want to make sure not to make it to where the fold out won't fold out. So, got to make sure I'm only punching through the unfinished side of that little lip. So I'll turn it over and check it. We are good to go. I love it when I make a pattern and it's actually right because I've already printed out enough of these or cut out enough of these to fill our 67 mystery boxes this month. All right, I'm going to pause this. When I come back, I'll have completed our stitch. I will have sanded the edge, and we're going to burnish the edges and talk about the finalization of the project. All right, so I sewed on the flap and see how it works. It folds back just like it ought to. Once that breaks in, that'll hold back nicely all by itself. There's no glue showing right there, so that's an awesome thing. My phone just went nuts. And then when I came back over to the desk, I got a little bit overexcited, I guess, that I was almost done, and I went ahead and edged the inside of this. I apologize for not doing that on the video. I used a Ron's number 2 and number 3 round edgers. I used a number 3 down here where it was really thick, and a number 2 everywhere else. And now I'm going to do the outside. I did not do it yet. And again, I'm going to use a number 3 down here where it's super thick, but then a number 2 everywhere else. And it can be kind of tricky where it goes from thick to thin. You have to be really careful, because if you run down into that area, you could actually just cut a big old notch out of your wallet. I've done it plenty of times. So you gotta go pretty gentle on it and easy, and slowly make your way around with your edger. Please let my my mistakes be your learning point, and don't do it yourself. All right, real difficult up here where the button is because it's trying to hold up off the cutting surface a little bit. All right, now I'm just going to take and nick off those little corners right there, just like I did on some of the inside parts, because sharp corners are never good. There'll be a point where your burnished edge wants to fray on those sharp corners. So yeah, so it's best to just nick them off just a little bit at like a 45-degree angle. And then when you burnish them, they'll be a little bit more rounded looking, and it'll be nice, and it won't like catch your hand or anything. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say your leather's going to cut you or anything, but it just is going to have a better appearance to it and everything. All right, so I'm gonna dye all those edges, and then I'm gonna burnish them, and then we'll come back and we'll fold it up and button it closed and hope that it works. That's always the nervous part, is when you go to fold it up and close it, and hope that everything wraps around like it ought to. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off the camera, since this is just over an hour long already, and then I'll be right back with you. All right, I'm gonna try to get this thing to focus in on this edge that we created here. I can. Super focus. I know I've threatened a million times that I'm going to buy a new camera, and I hadn't done it yet. Anyway, so this edge, I'm trying to get it where the light can see it, really does look like it's just one piece of leather, even though it's 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces of leather right there. So yeah. Anyway, it is all done. All the edging is done. All the burnishing is done. All of everything is done. It is now time to try to fold it up and snap it closed and hope it works. So, folds up like that. Folds down like that. New snaps are always a pain in the butt. And then there she be. That is a wallet we could all be proud to make. Yeah, I'm super, super excited about this project. I'm really glad. Let me get the focus on the wallet. There we go, I think. I swear I'm going to get a new camera. Anyway, I'm going to leave this under a weight or something overnight, and so that it can compress itself down and get its natural folds in. But there it is. To open it up, it's got your zippered pocket right there. Has another pocket behind it. It's got the one side of credit cards, the other side of credit cards, some leather dust in there, and then it has another pocket right there. So one heck of a wallet. I really hope people enjoy the template. I've had a lot of requests about making a ladies clutch template that was kind of detailed and had a lot of stuff, and I think we nailed that. A lot of people were buying our biker wallet template and just moving the clasp over to the middle and using it, but I didn't like it. I just didn't like it. I didn't think it was worthy to go into a nice purse or anything like that. I mean, it's supposed to be a rough dude wallet. Anyway, so Hope y'all enjoyed the video. I'm sorry that it's really, really long, but there was a lot that goes into this wallet. I mean, you're practically building two ropers and a biker right here. So anyway, until next time, again, I'm Aaron Heiser of Makers Leather Supply, and I really appreciate you watching. And if you have any questions or anything, please leave them in the comments. I try to answer every single one of them. Thanks so much. Have a great night.